So tonight is our 6th episode, and we've got forensics, mediumship as the topic. And we are very blessed to have some special guests. So I would encourage you to grab a seat because there's going to be some stuff going on tonight that you normally don't see or hear about. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. We hope you enjoy this evening, and we hope you come back more. And let's see, we got a couple announcements. Going forward, we are not going to announce a weekly lineup because I've had some instances where I have had some very, very knowledgeable people on different topics that were able to come last minute. And because I had already had a lineup, I wasn't able to bring them in. And then that made a situation where their schedules were filled for the next few months. And I don't want you guys to lose great content. So we're not going to do that. Tonight we have with us 3 special guests. We have, and I'm going to do them in a certain order on purpose. So we have MK Rowland from Lilydale. MK, you want to raise your hand? Woohoo! And we've got another very good friend of mine, Stacy Martin. And then we have another good friend of mine, Jennifer Schaefer. And Jennifer is one of the co-founders of Impartial Witness. Before we get started, I just want to tell everybody that at the end of this show, we'll have instructions for the raffle that we had started. So that way you'll be able to go back if you haven't seen the other ones. There's 3 of them in total. Okay. So Jennifer, I have had some very pointed questions asked.
Okay.
And what I figured we would do is I would give you the questions one by one. We'll all talk about them. And then after we get through, there's 9 questions. And when we get through those, then we'll take questions from people that are live on Facebook because these might answer some of their questions. Okay. So the very first question is, what is impartial witness?
Okay. Well, impartial witness we designed impartial witness, my friend Joyce Jackson and I, and a few others, because we realized that we would have loved to see what we call an algorithm with what this work is about. Eventually see an algorithm with it. And we realized that through our process over a few years before we even developed this, working with the community just made it better. So there's a lot of backstory to Impartial Witness, but Impartial Witness itself is it's a software platform that has a bunch of intuitives that work on cases that give back their answers. And then the AI component, the artificial intelligence component, goes through and gathers, like, for instance, if there's a missing person, and there's 200 people that look for this missing person, we realize that there's probably 80 to 90% of them will get, oh, it's over here. Okay? Depending upon what we're looking for, whether it's a weapon, whether it's the person of interest, whether it's the person, the victim, that all takes place in this software platform that we're currently developing. But in the meantime, we work on cases and we're utilizing it the same way we would the platform. We're creating an algorithm. That's what my goal is.
Okay, and some of us work with Impartial Witness, so we know what it does. It does.
Fascinating when we all work together.
Right? And we do it well.
Yes, you do.
So would you like to explain what we do?
Yes, I would love that. So several years ago, actually in 2013, I want to say, or 2012. Anyway, I started taking cases on. That was all my pro bono work. And what I realized, besides the stress factor, when you're sitting there with a family, or you're sitting there with the FBI, or you're sitting there with law enforcement, and you are getting you're being asked certain questions and seeing what comes in. It's a tremendous responsibility. And what you guys all know, it's interpretation, right? Well, what I realized is that there were so many cases that were coming in that I felt bad because I couldn't take them all on at the time that I could. And so I asked some of my friends, I'm like, hey, would you guys like to chip in and help out when there's cases that come in? And this was a really good group of friends that I knew were really good at, that were very good mediums, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that we would take the information, do it separately, not talk to each other, and give it back to our case manager. And 90% of the time, we all have the same answers, very similar answers. I thought that was fascinating. Well, then it kept happening over and over again. And we started getting more cases. And I'm like, I just think that I think everybody has this. Everyone has this. They just don't know that they do. And yes, there's some people that do it for work. Like I'm a working medium. I work every day. I mean, there's, all of us. But there's people that are not mediums that can still help out, that can still learn how to do this. And what it does is it strengthens your, as you know, I don't need to say this, we're talking to a bunch of mediums. It strengthens your abilities. And it actually made me more confident with working with individuals. It wasn't the other way around. Working on cases and having law enforcement telling them like, oh, there's some evidence on the roof of a house, and then they had to go out and get it. The worst thing that can happen is like, nah, it's not there. I'm like, okay, good, I don't have to do this anymore. Well, it kept on coming back that the direction that I was leading them was the right direction, or was the right, place. So because of that, we opened it up more, which you guys are privy to, and you guys have seen and heard about it, and you guys have worked on cases. It became even more fascinating because the larger the group, we still got the same answers. And so I basically took the complaints of law enforcement. They're like, Jen, if a kid goes missing, that 1,000 people will call and say they're all psychics and tell us where to look. We don't have the manpower to do that. We don't have the money, the manpower, and a lot of times that there's just no way we can do it. They're all over the place. I have never offered information on a case. Never once in my life. They've always come to me. I've never called the police. I've never called law enforcement. I've never called someone saying your kid's down the road. I've never done that. That being said, because I get a lot of cases and I filter it out through everybody, I took that complaint. I'm like, well, what if there was an app that everybody can, we have all the intuitives, the law enforcement will put in a case, or our case manager will put in a case. We do our work, we put it in the app, and then the AI component goes through it. So that way the police don't have to, right?
Right.
It tells them what are the strongest hits. And then it also validates the medium based upon whether or not they're correct or not. And granted, cases last for years, okay? But I've been doing this long enough where information that I said 7 years ago is coming back now. Because time, when you're doing cases, it all feels like it's right there. But there's things that I've said years ago that now are coming into effect. That help answer your question. I'm sorry if I...
No, it does. And that was good. So let me ask you, for any mediums that may be watching that want to do what we do, could you tell them how they can join our group with Impartial Witness?
So Lisa Williams is a great medium.
Yes, she is.
We've worked on cases together. She has some courses right now. Anybody that does courses with her, anybody that does courses with people that have studied under me, and the reason for this is because we want to make sure that it's ethical. And so if anybody wants to teach a course, just hit me up and say, hey, I want to teach the course. I've worked with you. I'll say, of course, please do it, because a lot of people don't have time. Please, please, please do it, because you understand, you guys went through what it is that we can say, what it is that we can't say, those kind of things. And that's really that's really our biggest concern.
And I want you guys to know that Jen really means that, because what I can tell you is the three of us that are here tonight, MK, well, the four of us, MK, Stacy, Jennifer, and myself, all took this training under Lisa Williams. Okay. And I was talking with Jennifer just a little bit ago. And we were talking about something and I said, well, you know, there's ethics, and Jen was like, no, teach it. You know what you're doing, and I'm not worried. I'm not offended by it. So she really does mean that, you guys. So that's an amazing thing. So now we're going to get into some juicy stuff that you guys never see. So Jen, one of the questions I had is, can you give an example of cases that we all have worked on?
Yes.
And with this, we'll let each one of us comment on it. And my students, George and Michelle, if you guys have any questions, jump in, because what you guys don't realize is you're learning a lot of this. I just haven't told you that that's part of this.
Yeah.
So you guys just don't know that you're learning it.
Okay. Okay. So I am going to go over, do you guys remember Morgan's case, Morgan Ingram?
Yes.
Okay. MK, do you remember Morgan's case?
I probably will when I hear the detail.
Okay. She was 20 years old and she was murdered, but they said that it was natural causes that then got changed into suicide.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So working on this case, this was my first case, and it's still an ongoing investigation. When anybody declares that it's suicide, the law enforcement does not have to open up the case. There are more suicides in Colorado than there is homicide because of it. Yeah, it's awful. They have a law that says that you can't go against the sheriffs. It's a 100-year-old law, so they wouldn't be overthrown, and they can say no to the Colorado Bureau. The Colorado Bureau of Investigations went in there several times to open it up, and they said no, and that's it. So then they have to go. So there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of things that have to be changed, and people are working very hard to get that changed. That being said, when they came to me, I didn't know anything. And how we work on cases is that the less we know, the better it is for us. Way better. Because if you get it in your head, like if they have it, that's the whole reason why we have an executive case manager, is because people tend to give so much information, and it's too much information, because they're going to think one thing and we might get we might get something completely different, and it just ruins it for us. It's very challenging for us to work off of that. So I was given her name. I was given something tangible. When I work on a case that's fairly fresh, I always like to have something in my hand, but you don't need to have that. It just helps if it comes to you. And by just touching something of this girl's, I realized she was such an amazing spirit, and she showed me everything. And another thing is that if you get something in your head like you don't want to believe it, the universe lets you have it. They just let you have it. So you really have to have a kind of a strong stomach to do it, because your first impulse is like, hell no, no way.
Look at Stacy.
It's true.
Well, after doing it so much, unfortunately you get a little bit used to it. But with these parents that came to me, I gave them, I looked at them and I had 2 minutes to tell them. The easy thing would have said she did commit suicide. But as you all know, you can't go against what you get. But I knew I would change their lives forever. I knew it, that the second I opened up my mouth saying, I don't believe that she committed suicide, it was going to put them on a path that was destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the victims, their parents get bullied. And this is exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
The second they start standing up for what they believe. But there was a lot. There's every case, there's never been an easy killing. It's always very, very, very complicated. I know that sounds bizarre, but you guys know what I'm saying. Nobody just goes up and shoots somebody. It's never like that. There's always several factors involved. But that case still is so dear to my heart. And I'm sure you guys have, I'm sure you guys have a lot if you guys have anything that I know it was a while ago that you guys, that we did the case. If you guys have anything to share about that case, about how you felt while you were doing it. Like, what was that like for you?
Either of you? Go ahead, Stace.
When we were doing her case, I only wanted her name. I didn't want anything else. When you get a picture with it, it really throws me off. I want to get information just based off of the name. I'm not sure if anybody else works that way, but that's how I get the truest sense of what I'm doing. And she was talking to me, so I knew that she was deceased. And but she was very informative. I mean, the things that she showed me, and I could see her clearly. I could see her strawberry blonde hair and all that kind of stuff. I really believe she wants the case to be solved. And I think that they do know who they are, but they're not opening the case. Is that right, Jennifer?
Not yet. They're still working on it. They're still compiling everything, and they're still working on it.
Yeah.
But yes, and in fact, you just reminded me, we gave you just the name in the beginning.
Yes.
And then because everybody, that's exactly how it should work. And then we give you the picture, and then we ask you details. So once you get information, and then you can go back to the case and see what came through. Because everything, your first initial hits, the one thing I can say, are always usually spot on. It's
Right.
when our minds get into it, it's when our heart gets into it, it's when that happens that it makes a little thing skewy. Like when they told me afterwards that they were told that it was natural causes, I was just devastated. I'm like, what? But then that gets in your head and you're like, what if I was wrong? Oh my gosh, what if I'm wrong? But anyway, yeah, that's great. I mean, and that set your precedence to do that, to do that from that point on. Everybody works differently though.
We do. MK, do you have anything?
I was thinking about another case that Jennifer had. We'll see if she gets to it. I agree. I want only the name.
Yeah.
I don't want anything else at that point, because like you were saying, Jennifer, the more information you get, the more it prejudices you or makes you doubt yourself. So just having a name to me gives me my connection, especially if they are in spirit. And really from the name, I think I get the most reliable information.
That's great. I actually work that way just with my own mediumship. I only want the front name, and I call them out of a class. I'm like, I just need I always ask for names when I'm doing, gallery readings, but not well, whatever, it doesn't matter. But when I'm working with the client, I will write down the name and I'll sit there and stare at the name, and then everything comes in. I just know that we're connected to that.
It's funny you just said writing, because one of my favorite things to do, and I don't get to do it too often, is yes, I like just the name too, but I love writing. If they wrote something, like the last thing they wrote to somebody, and I grabbed this as you said it, I made this, and this is what I will use to go over writing, because it won't damage it. If you it with a pen or a pencil, you're going to write over it. Anything sharp, it can damage it. And that's the last thing they have that person wrote them. It may be a card or whatever.
Yeah.
So I love to go over handwriting. I get a lot from that too.
You're very creative. I'm not sure I could even think about making a pen or a pencil or whatever.
Well, it's an antler. It's an antler and peacock feathers.
Again, it's not something you've made. I've seen your work, and you're an amazing artist. But that's great.
Well, thank you. I don't necessarily think so, but thank you. You have another case you want to talk about?
Well, let's go with MK.
Okay. Something where we can get a little more in detail for people. And let me tell you, people, as mediums that do this, Jennifer said you have to have a strong stomach, and you do. Stacy and I were just talking about this briefly on another video. where Stacy said that, you know, an overdose, she will go through the actual overdose. And we all learn as time goes on how to limit that, where we ask our guides to give us a hint and then take it away. But, you know, when you see somebody shot or stabbed or what have you, it's not easy.
Can I talk
Yeah,
about?
of course.
So I did have to learn that the hard way. Whenever I would have somebody that committed suicide, I asked not to be shown that. Well, that really screws you up because it takes so much longer to get information if you don't want to see it. Because then they give you other things like they can't breathe, or they, you know, now I just say, show me and make me laugh afterwards. And 9 out of 10 times they do that. You just have to, you know, even though and I try not to laugh in front of the parents, but 9 out of 10 times they do something, they show it to me really fast, and then they make me laugh. Funny way. So, and that's a huge thing to, you don't want you to be efficient in this work. You have to get in and you have to get out. You can cry later. But if you're doing this work, you have to look at the world as one big playground. And there is going to be things that are heartbreaking, but you have to know that there's polar opposites. You have to know the polarities. You have to know there's grace involved somewhere. But when you are doing a case, ask for the information. And what I ask for is a hologram. So I get a hologram when I look at somebody intuitively, and that helps me because I don't take it on. My son taught me that before he went to bed at 7 o'clock at night, like when he was really young. He's like, Mom, everybody's a hologram. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, everybody, it doesn't matter where they have the pain. It always starts somewhere else. The hologram will show you. And he went to sleep. He doesn't remember it, of course. And I've used it ever since. And it now, when I look at somebody, I can see them as a hologram and get bullet points and never take it on. It's fascinating.
And that's interesting that you say that because we all work differently.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you work?
I work very, if they're in spirit, I get most of my information from mediumship. I really feel that connection. If I'm not sure if they're alive or if I do believe that they're still alive, then it's obviously intuitive. To me, it's really kind of that simple. I get more of a download and I hear the most. I get some visual, but I was a critical care nurse practitioner for 20 years, and my master's is actually in burn and trauma. So I have naturally developed a pretty strong stomach. So spirit, for whatever reason, doesn't show it to me as much as they tell it to me. And I'm not really sure why they've done that, because I would understand it visually probably just as easily. So whether it's sparing me or whether it's just using my medical knowledge, I don't know, but I tend to get it more through my ears and a download, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I can't stand the sight of blood. Like I pass out, like hurting my finger. My daughter knows it. She's like, Mom, I scraped my knee. Don't look at it. I have to clean it. I'll be right back. I just get those chills that you can't get rid of over just seeing a little bit. I can work on cases all day long, but I can't see the sight of blood. I don't know. It's just.
Stace, how do you work?
Since I was an art teacher for 14 years, everything comes in visually. A lot of things come in visually. And then when I hear it auditory, I will also see the word in front. So things come through as almost like a white sheet, as if I'm watching an old time movie on a white sheet with a projector. And that's how I get a lot of things. I also get a lot of feeling, and that's where I get the drug overdose or the suicide, or I feel like I've been hung, things like that. But mostly everything comes through visually for me.
And for me, it comes in a multitude of ways. I remember I once had somebody make an inquiry to a case. And Michelle, I think I was on the phone with you. And I looked at the inquiry and I turned to you and I said, they're gone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was like, huh?
It was like instant.
What
It was just instant. Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I feel it, sometimes I see it. I'm blessed though, because my guides will actually shield me. And I know why that is, but I'm very blessed because I don't have generally a lot of trauma. And by the way, anybody out there that is interested, if any one of us resonate with you, at the end of this video, all our information will be up if you need to schedule a reading with somebody. Okay, so and we're not going to get into blood and gore, you guys, because there's just certain things that you just don't do. And, somebody's family could be watching, you never know. So, we're not going to get into real specifics here. Please understand that. Okay. So, and I think we covered this a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. How do we work together as a group? We covered that towards the beginning, if I remember correctly. Okay. Here's a good one. Do we actually solve cases? Go ahead.
No, we do not. And that's a big, we don't even give evidence. They have to make it evidence. We give information that they have to make evidential. And it takes such an enormous team to make things happen, that there's anybody that says they solve cases is not being truthful. You can help solve a case. I've helped assisted, I've watched through, by talking to somebody that's on surveillance with the FBI, I can tell them what they're looking at and where to go, but they still solve the case. You know what I mean? Not in the way that I've worked, I've helped assist on many cases, but I've never solved. There's no solving cases. That takes an enormous effort from so many different modalities of law enforcement.
The way that I look at it, yes, Michelle.
Go ahead and comment, because it's doesn't really have to do with that.
Okay. The way that I look at it is we give them information, them meaning detectives, that says yes. What's that?
Give it to families too, almost.
Yeah, that's true. But in my mind, what we're basically giving them is enough information to say, yes, you're on the right track, or you may need to look over here, or, the guy that you really like, that gave you a real good story, you may want to check him out a little bit more, because I think there's a fish in the beef stew.
Right.
What were you going to say, Michelle?
I was just curious, like generally how many mediums or intuits are in.
Impartial witness?
Yeah, like how many kind of take part?
A lot.
Yeah, we have over 200 from around the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but everybody takes part when they have time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like 200 every single time.
No.
Right.
I can tell you that unfortunately I have not taken part in, I think, the last couple. I was really busy.
There is no crime shaming.
Right.
There's several times where we just put it to the group because I don't have time to talk to talk to them. So we don't have to worry about that. We're just happy it's pro bono. So we're at this point in time, it's pro bono until we get a system set up. But we're just happy that people do it, and it helps you with your own knowing.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you once we do get information that we can give you feedback on it. But it's amazing. We're just amazed with how everybody comes in with their work. We're just like, we both are just, my executive assistant, my executive director, she's just blown away by how great the information is. Because she usually knows a lot more. She's the one that gets all the information. So she's able to back it up or talk to people. So when she gets it, she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got this. So it's pretty exciting.
Stace, do you have anything to add?
I know like lately when I've been getting like an email come through from Jen and her team, and it says like there's urgency. I won't even read the email. It's as soon as I see that's urgent, I'll start getting information and then I will go through the email, just so I don't taint anything that I'm getting right away from seeing that email pop up.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. That can be a little nerve wracking.
yeah, I guess, well, I just don't want to taint anything. I just want to intuitively go off of what I'm feeling, just seeing the email pop up.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great that you can do that.
And then I go from there. And then I see if there's any other information that I get.
So I'm usually getting the cases while I'm in the car.
Mm.
Tells me, hey, we have a case that came in. I'm like, she'll say one word. I'm like, okay, this person did this, and I'll give it to her while I'm driving, and that's it. And then she gives it to the team. But in the, because whatever you're doing, when you're able to just go with it, that's the best. If it comes in, you just do it. You just say it, give it.
Yeah, I spend maybe like 5 to 10 minutes at the most, because then anything after that, I just feel like,
You start doubting it.
yes, absolutely.
Trying too hard.
Yeah, I remember there was a time, Jennifer, you and I were talking on the phone, and there had been a case, and we're not going into specifics. And I remember turning to you and saying, they took a document. And you turned to me and you said, what? And I said, they took a document. And you turned around and you confirmed that, yes, they had taken a document. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
MK, do you have anything to add?
One of the first forensic classes I took from Lisa, Jennifer was there and first talking about the algorithm and what you were trying to do. And you put up a case, and I'll be very careful. You put up a case of a young man who had a military connection, as I remember. And he had been murdered. And you gave us some information first, and we wrote some things down, as I recall, and then you put his picture up. And I've never told you till this moment. When you put his picture up, the name of the suspect immediately came into my head. Do you know what case I'm talking about?
I'm trying to remember if it was he killed someone that was in the military, because I believe
He was engaged. This young man was engaged to a girl, and he was in the military, and there was a well-known person involved.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I
The
know
minute
exactly.
the picture came up, that name immediately came to me.
Wow.
Immediately. And I brushed it off and didn't raise my hand or say anything, because I thought maybe there's some kind of resemblance. And that's why I think it, instead of just coming out with it.
Because like now
I learned.
you just gotta give what you get. I'm the biggest skeptic of the other side.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, no. In fact, I'll just say something real fast. Like, somebody wanted to know where they were moving, but their last name was Austin. And I looked at the last name, I kept focusing on, I'm like, oh no, hell no. And then I went, sorry. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling this. And she's like, well, what about Austin? I'm like, I get so mad at myself. I'm like,
Yep.
really? I'm like, I'm sorry, that was my, But yeah, you just gotta, I've learned, no matter how crazy it is, how crazy it sounds, you just gotta give what you get. But that's great that you got a name.
It sounded pretty crazy when it went through my head.
That case is still,
I'm
it's
sure.
all over the news. Like, that one is so connected to so many other cases.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. John Benet Ramsey. It's connected to every other case. Yeah, it's very, very layered. Wow. Multi-layered.
You know what, you guys, Yes, Chris, you have to trust the information you get. So here's an interesting one. Tammy joined late, which we forgive you for. Are detectives really receptive to the information, or just a choice few who will work with psychics or mediums? I've known a lot of them and don't generally find them outwardly receptive. I would be interested in doing this as well.
So I can go with that.
Yes, yeah.
Detectives in general, law enforcement in general, you know, I think they become receptive when I have a lot of them that become my clients. But they want to talk about their personal lives. They could give two craps about anything else. You know what I mean? But because of that, when they do get a case, they'll call me. But they have to trust you first. And that takes a long time. That's why because it's unfortunately so many psychics or people that have said that they're psychic, they take tons of money from people that, you know, that are, you know, in need. Like, I can't tell you the horror stories that come into my office. I'll give you one. I had one guy that was in with his wife that was in my office, and he had his arms closed like this, and you just sat there and stared. And his son went missing. And as I was trying to give him information, I'm like, listen, I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart. I appreciate you coming, you know, you sought me out. And his wife's like, you got to stop this. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm like, can you tell me what's wrong? And he's like, well, when my son first went missing, 2 psychics showed up at my door, said that they knew where he was, said that they would find him, filmed it. We gave them money to go find him, came back and said, oh, his body parts were sold in Mexico. So I'm sorry if I have a problem with psychics.
Wow.
And I sat there and I'm like, it just was, this is why it's so important for us to have it, because we don't get regulated. But Lisa and myself, we regulate. If you are coming into this, we're going to regulate the best that we can to make it the most. And that's why we have given ourselves a name so that they do feel comfortable with coming into seeing us. The law enforcement will let us know. But a lot of times it's people that have been in law enforcement for a long time that come see us because they get it.
Mhm.
Newer ones have to prove themselves. They're not going to touch us with a 10-foot pole.
Mhm.
That's going to change. That's what we want to change.
So we
Yep.
also have, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, honey. I'm sorry.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I just was gonna underscore a point that Jen made earlier, and most often working with the family is the better gateway, and then the police may be involved after you're involved with the family. Thinking your first contact is going to be the police right off the bat is not really very realistic. Would you agree, Jen?
I do agree. Yeah, I usually get the detectives, or, you know, I work consistently with other law enforcement agencies, which is different. But when
Mhm.
it comes to detectives and police officers, it's usually after the fact. You know, and I'm like, and if they're not willing to work with us, just tell them it's your own idea. Like, hey, can you go look over there? You don't need credit for it. That's not why we do it. Say it's your own idea, because I'm getting it from you anyway.
Mhm.
You know, from you or your loved ones. Make it your own idea. I've had to tell the FBI, like, make it your own idea. You know, don't say you're talking to some blonde chick in California.
Yeah, you're not talking to some hot chick in California, you know. Yes, Stacy.
I remember Jen, when I had class with Jen and Lisa, they also said, if like you're not part of this group, you don't want to just be calling in because you become number 1 suspect,
Mhm.
you know? So that's a really important point for somebody that is a medium or a psychic or whatever, that they're not just calling in and saying, hey, I think it's over here.
Lisa became a number 1 suspect.
Lisa did.
Yes, she did. She did.
Yeah, she will never do that again. But yeah. Yeah, and she right now, for anybody that's listening, she has some great courses right now you can join in on.
Yep. So here's another one. And I agree with this 100%. I believe the good detectives have deep intuition themselves. 100%.
Absolutely.
100.
And just like mediums and just like psychics, you have to understand that sometimes it's challenging for us to get it for ourselves, right? So we
Mhm.
might call a friend, we try to handle it ourselves, but if it's really important to us, I call Lisa. Like my son went missing, I called Lisa. I'm like, hey, and she's like, give me aerial maps. He's okay, but give me aerial maps. He went lost on a ski slope at the top of the mountain. I just was paralyzed. There was no, I felt him. I got a picture of him standing okay, but that went away as soon as I'm like, oh, 2 ski teams got deployed. And sure enough, he was found.
And
But-
you know, it's interesting that you said that about maps. I use a particular mapping system that I am able to put a pinpoint, like I used it tonight for a lost dog. I can put a pinpoint where the last known spot this dog was.
Mhm.
And then from there, I can go out, and if I need to, I can put another pinpoint and get exact coordinates from that pinpoint.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really nice mapping system. So here's another question. Is there a lot of stress involved? And I think we've covered that just a little bit, but you may want to, somebody may want to talk on that. And you know what, actually, George, you've been quiet. Do you have anything to say? Because, you know, you're Mr. Sunshine.
I am.
So
right?
quiet that I'm missing you.
He's
You know, it's been so informative, and it's interesting. You're talking about these cases, and I'm kind of like getting these impressions, and I'm kind of, you know, going through it. But I don't have too many questions. I mean, I guess that the one thing is, you know, when you're dealing with something so sad and also dealing with something so tragic, right? Sad and tragic, you know, being an empath, I mean, obviously you're going to feel things, right? Top of that, you have that psychic layer. How do you deal with that, right? Is it deep breathing? Is it a stone? What is it, you know? It's got to be overwhelming. I mean, there's just, I don't know how you would, I guess it would be just really hard. And I'm not quite sure, because again, this is a new world to me. And I just kind of wonder, like, what are the methods that you use to make yourself okay, that you can continue through the process and actually get to a point where you can advise somebody? Because there's got to be a lot going on. I mean, you were talking about that young girl earlier, and the minute you said that, it was like instantly, you know, I started seeing this young girl dancing.
And she
in
danced.
field.
And she danced, and we never said that on air, but she danced. She was a beautiful dancer, very artistic. Write down your impressions.
George,
Yeah,
George is very talented, by the way.
yeah.
And so is Michelle, both of them. And the third member of our crew, Leanne, couldn't be in tonight, unfortunately. And let's all send her some healing prayers. She had to, one of her four-legged babies crossed over last night.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So is there stress involved? MK, Stacy, somebody?
Well, stress, and also I think, you know, is there a method, right, to dealing with this? I mean, I'm hearing the way you're going about it, but there's got to be these certain things you go to and you implement to get you through it in the moment. Because if you're getting hits and they're pretty violent, then you're seeing things. If you're hearing it, as you said, Stacy, if you're visually seeing it, I mean, that's got to take a toll. And so I'm wondering, what is those things that you go to that are going to get you through? Is it visualizing something else? Is it kind of just going with the facts and just breathing it through? I mean, I just kind of wonder.
Go ahead. Okay.
MK?
I think this is where having worked in critical care and emergency rooms for so long, which is also why I got out of it and changed professions. But I learned long ago to separate myself from the situation. It's not that you don't experience all those things, but you experience it more as an observer.
Yes.
So you separate from the actual situation. So for example, like me, when I feel, you know, I'm very sensitive to energies, right?
Mhm.
And if I ever feel that dark cloud coming, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, that ball's over here, I'm over here. I can observe it. It's there, but I'm not going to go there. So that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's almost like looking out a window. I'm not saying I do look out a window, but I'm just trying to give you an analogy. But it's that observer. I'm watching it. I'm not a part of it.
MK never looks out of windows.
Yes, I do, because I have a beautiful koi pond. You can see out of every window of my.
Yes,
that's
she
my house.
does.
My koi pond is outrageous.
It is beautiful.
I'm gonna
And
put one
if-
in now.
It's my pride and joy.
It is. And if she tried to tell you she doesn't look out windows, I'm going to tell you there'd be a fish in the beef stew. Stacy, do you have something to say?
I think since I feel a lot of physical sensations when I do this, sometimes it's hard to remove myself from it. And also my mind constantly works 24/7. So I'm up all night just worrying about things or thinking with, I can never turn my mind off. And so that's a big stumbling block for me, is that I can't just do the case or give somebody a mediumship reading and then just turn it off. I'm trying to work on that, but I still get stuff like even afterwards. And that's where I need to learn to say, okay, I'm done with this and I have to move on.
Stacy, we are right here. I am
Yeah.
the same way. Like I'm literally sitting here and it's just constantly like, da, 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 da.
Right.
Just won't stop. And I'm like, oh,
So
and then you want to
my
communicate it.
Yeah, my biggest thing was if I didn't say it, then I couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And because they kept like constantly just in my ear saying, you need to say this, you need to say that. I'm like, well, it's not my turn yet, or it's not the right time or whatever like that. And once I got it out, then they sort of let me alone. But if I kept on holding on to information that I was to give, that was the biggest thing for me. I needed to give what I got.
Right.
Does that make sense, George?
Yeah. Makes complete sense. Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah, well, you had an instance where you kept getting the same thing for a couple of days because you didn't, wasn't that you that was telling us a story about you had like 3 days in a row?
Alfred, the famous Alfred story.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, Alfred.
Oh my God, that was quite the situation.
So George, what I'm going to tell you is, I'm going to get you, Jennifer. Hold on, honey. We'll go in depth in this topic in class. Just remind me. But what I'm going to tell you for me, and then we're going to go to Jennifer, and then we have some things that we need to go through with people online. Remember when I told you when you first started working with me that there's a wow factor when you first start? Like you'll get this big hit and you'll be right and you're like, oh my God. And then you can't sleep all night because you're like, I can't believe I just did that. And what have you?
By the way, I just want to let you know.
Well, here's what happens. Remember I told you that as you go on, you become desensitized to that. So the wow factors are fewer and farther between.
Yeah.
For me, it's the same thing. You get over time, and I don't mean this to sound the way it may. So people forgive me because there's nothing unsensitive about the topic. But when I'm working, I'm desensitized quite to a large degree.
So it would
that makes
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would just be one of my fears. I think. I mean, just listening to this, I'm like, wow, because I know how visual I am, very much like Stacy, and wow, I mean, it's got to be tough. I mean, like I said, I'm sitting here with this young girl, and lots of stuff going through my head, and I just can feel it. It's just so you can only imagine being in it all the time, dealing with this case by case. It's got to be tough.
Jen?
Just a few things that have helped me because I've learned from, trial and error. At one point, I couldn't get up in the morning. It was so debilitating in a situation. Then I had 3 cases that collided, and I panicked. Like it was one of those things where you're just like, oh my God, I can't. You have the what I call an energetic like stop where everything just goes out, and then in the morning, what I do to reboot is I run down to the water, whatever it is that you do that gets you back.
Yeah.
And you But the one thing I've learned for myself, it's not for everybody, but I never turn this off. I just don't, because you try so hard and it takes so much effort. I just don't turn it off. I just don't go around reading everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you get, like, you know, we're not trying to say that you get desensitized, but if you just know that you're always on, it's fine. You'll get over the loop. In the beginning, you can't help it. You can't help it but have a loop in your head. But
Yeah.
there's times where, you know, I led them to a place to find this girl. You know, it was a big process, and it was funny because I think some of you have heard this. I'm like, walking is deadly. I was talking to 2 DEA agents, FBI agents, because it was over across the border. It was this girl that was been missing for 2 weeks, her mother, and I think a couple more detectives or whatever. And we're all on a conference call at night. I'm like, okay, I'm like, don't go walking tonight. Walking is deadly. Fast forward the next day, because then they sent me aerial maps and my brain just went, whoop. So the next morning I went to the beach. I'm like, I know where she's at. I know, I can feel it, because we were narrowing it down to 3 different airports. And I led them to what I thought she was at, because also if you get shown, is she looking there? Because I'm visual too. Or is she there? So I realized, I'm like, where is she? And she showed me being over, like, across the way. After leading them through an airport, they went to the street. The street was called Walking Street. Walking is deadly. They realized this guy was, you know, apparently had a bunch of priors or whatever. And they're like, I'm like, get it open. And so they had to go through the process of getting warrants and everything. And that night, I'll never forget, I was at a charity event and I get a phone call like, Jennifer, she was there, but her body was not. There was too much DNA there. So there was too much blood of hers that was there, but her body was not, and she's still not found. But that devastated me. I lost my shit because I called it off that night. So what if, you know, you go through that process of what if she was still alive, all these things. The detective, right. the DA they were so grateful for the information that I gave, but still it was just, and my husband just said, you can't do this anymore if it takes over your life. And, you know, you have to make a choice, and that's where you become desensitized. And that's where you have to get to a part where you have to look at it if you want to do it, to get in and get out. But there's always going to be cases that you will never forget.
So I have one more question. So when you're doing these cases, are you, because I mean, for me, it's like you connect to your spirit guides. They give you a lot of information. They give you the direction you need. You get these hits, very visual. But then how often are you connecting with the person that unfortunately is deceased?
It's a great question. I connected with the person that was deceased, but I didn't believe the way she was killed. So I was shown the way she was killed. And I'm like, no. That's where I thought my cases were colliding, because I saw her getting slashed. So I'm like, no. And so it took me twice as long to get different information to get them there. At that point, it becomes psychic, because I didn't believe that she was killed that way. So I got cut off. Boom. And so then I have to go a whole different route. And you just have to get to the point where you don't care where it comes from. You just get the information. And I don't mean to say don't care. Let me rephrase that. You have to trust that you're getting the right information. You have to trust your guys. You have to welcome it. And you can't, again, it has ruined so many different, it took me so much longer on so many cases because I didn't want to believe what I saw.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my trusted assistant, Michelle, because for whatever reason, it is not letting me scroll down, and some of the comments that I wanted to discuss have slid down. I know there was one about paranormal. So right in that area, there was a few that we haven't discussed.
Have you guys ever been, this is Mariah, have you guys ever been brought in on a case that was already solved, but there may be paranormal aspects of the crime? We have a case around my area that I'm specifically referring to where a man committed a murder and turned himself in. The exact same thing happened in the same house 20 years ago on the same day.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Okay, I think you stumped this. Stumped Adam.
That's
No, there's definitely an energetic pull there. And if you get afraid, it's kind of like having asthma. You feel like if you're afraid to breathe, then it makes it to where you can't breathe.
Yep.
And if you're afraid when you're there, it's gonna off of that as well. Whatever, I would just think, I'm thinking of Cindy Kaza. You guys know Cindy? I love Cindy. She's a very dear friend of mine, and she does Holzer files. I could never do what she does going into these places, but I'm sure I haven't worked on a case where there's still activity at a house, but I do believe that it's there. I do believe that there's activity that could be there.
well, it's funny because my other student that couldn't be here tonight runs probably one of the largest paranormal groups in New York.
Yeah,
And she's one of my students, and I do believe that there could be a link to that, only because of the paranormal things that I have learned from my student.
yeah.
That would be a hard one to prove, obviously. I mean, as a medium, we could probably make the correlation if we went there, I'm sure. I have no doubt, but it would be like, how do you prove that? And is law enforcement going to care?
Yeah.
The reality is you killed somebody.
What they could do is do a blessing, like have
A
somebody,
cleanse, yeah.
Whatever faith you're in, whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter. Have them cleanse it for you. I think that would be the way to go, because I don't think there's anything else you can do.
Michelle, there were some others. There was like 3 or 4 of them right there.
There is Billy Joe. Are any of you able to take a break from spirit for downtime, or is it all the time spirit trying to speak to you?
Go ahead, MK.
Kind of just touched on a little bit.
I guess I'm different in this group. I definitely turn it on and turn it off. I don't even remember my readings. By the time the person hits the door, I have no idea what I've said.
Yep.
And if they ask me, I won't. One of the things I tell people is if you have a question during the reading because you didn't understand me or something, you have to ask then, because if you wait till the end, I'll have no idea. So I don't walk around getting hits unless I am turning it on. I think it's the way I was trained. I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it's the way I was trained, that the philosophy of my early teachers was you need to be able to control spirit, not let spirit control you.
Yes, Stacy.
When I go to Walmart or places like that, I am definitely turned off. I do not have that on. I protect myself that way. But if I'm going around about everyday life, I don't really make it a point to turn it off.
Right.
But if I'm going into a large crowd of people, absolutely. I don't want to be inundated with all of that. I mean, that'll drive you nuts. But I also don't remember readings as well. But sometimes I'll get a spirit that keeps coming back to reiterate something, or to give me more information, like after my reading. So I've had that, but within a half an hour of having a reading or something, I forget the information unless I've talked to the client about specific parts of that during my reading, if that makes sense.
Completely.
Okay.
I think
Go ahead.
I have, oh, I'm sorry, did I cut off Jennifer?
That's okay. Go ahead. We'll get to her.
I was gonna say, I feel like I have that problem that the mechanics, I think, kind of gave me about my car one time. I think I have an intermittent problem where it just kind of, it just constantly is happening every once in a while. And very similar to Stacy, which is interesting. If someone's gonna communicate and they have something to say, they will not stop until it's said. I mean, they're very forceful about it. And the best thing to do is just release it. Call that person up that you think it's related to, and the next thing you know it is. And we talked about it earlier, but I just recently had this situation where somebody by the name of Alfred kept coming back to me. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, Alfred. You know, I don't know how to help you, you know? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I figured it out. And then I called that person up and they're like, oh, you mean my grandfather, you know? And here he goes. And oh, it's that. Oh, it's this. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. And then it stops. Right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. But I can turn it off when I go into stores. But if I'm definitely at like funerals, weddings, a little harder. But just depends, I guess. I'm not, that's the next class that I'm going to take with Randy.
That's covered in this series that you're in, honey.
Yeah. Okay.
Jennifer?
The only thing I wanted to say is when I said I never read people in stores. Spirit doesn't interrupt me. I'm just saying that I constantly am asking questions to my own guides, like, should I do this? Should I do that? That's what I'm saying, is that I don't turn it off. It's not that I go into stores and knock on somebody, you know, I've never done that.
No, I wouldn't think so.
It's never like that. I've never offered information, but I just don't turn it off so that way I don't have to turn it on. That's what I'm saying. But back to not remembering anything, it's because, so they've studied, of course, my brain. I have been told that I have the theta state. So it's the delta theta state when I do readings. Everybody does. Well, if you've ever, that means you're asleep. So if you've ever talked to somebody while they're sleeping, they don't remember. That's our whole day at work being awake, you guys. That is what our brain waves go into. And that is why we don't remember. But if I have feelings associated to the reading, that's what I can recall. Cases are a little bit more difficult to shake. Because they're a little bit more, you remember names, you remember tragic scenes, like they're just a little bit more difficult. But again, you know, like, yeah, if spirit, like I don't ever like look into a client before they get to my office. I just don't. It's just never, I've never done that. I don't do that in gallery readings or anything else, but I do, because of my dad passing 3 years ago, I am open to like, hey dad, kind of help us out here or help me out. And you know what they do? They make things happen, allow them. And to me, that's being open. But it's, again, I don't have spirit constantly bombarding me. I knew, like, so I guess if you want to look at it like that, I turn it off, but I just choose to say that I don't, because then I don't have to turn it on. Whatever.
But that makes sense. I'm a theta healer, so I always go into a theta brainwave, or I always go to where I need to go to do theta when I do readings. So that makes sense. Absolutely.
So I agree that our deceased loved ones do help us. As a matter of fact,
Absolutely.
some of you may know this, some may not. My aunt was the retired bureau chief of the Department of Justice for the state of California. And she was in charge of criminal identification. She helped institute the system where if you're pulled over in one state and you have a warrant in another one, it shows up. And she also helped to force men not to be able to leave the state and get away without child support. So she was responsible for quite a bit. And when I'm working a case, she always steps in. Who better? Who better? I mean, this is what she did for a living. As far as turning it on and turning it off. Oh, and when it comes to money, I had another aunt that was very wealthy and she steps in. So, you know, it's like, woohoo, come on in. But I have an agreement with my guides that anything I need to know, they tell me. Other than that, I do shut down, and I will tell you guys why. In my early stages, it was like white noise. I was so irritable all the time. It never stopped. And there were so many talking at once that I didn't even know what it was. It was just like white noise. So for those of us that, I'm going to date myself, MK will get this, some of the rest of you may not. There was a point in time where at night, the stations would shut down and you would get snow on the TV screen and it would go, and that's what it was like.
Yeah.
It would be constant.
I would shut down too if I had that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get to Oh, here's an interesting question.
Oh, are you seeing them now?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. Like, have you, any of you ever had an EEG done while giving a reading? I doubt it. I know I haven't. Not while giving one. And I don't remember mine either. And Nels, it's a significant reading. Like, I remember I did a couple readings at the Stump in Lilydale that were, you know, kind of big deals. And I do remember a little bit more about those, but generally I don't. And it's funny because I remember being in a class with Lisa and Sharon Klingler, and I love me some Sharon. And I was doing a reading and I said something about, I think it was Mike and so. And I think I must have said Mike again. Oh yes, her cards. I think I must have said Mike again. I have no clue because like I wasn't there. And Sharon turned around, she said, well, why didn't you just say two? And I think it was Mike. I couldn't tell you the name for sure. And I looked at her like a deer in headlights because I had no idea what she was talking about. And I put 2 and 2 together that I must have said the name twice. So, but that's how it works. You just kind of go off into a zone. So here's one. What do you do when you have a missing person and you feel that they're already dead? Oh my.
Whoa.
Oh my. Yeah, that's a tough one. Who
Well,
wants to go with that?
I would just start by saying you still have to work the case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still want to find the remains or what happened or whatever. You're still going to work the case.
I agree. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I work the cases they're still alive because they are. Whether they're in spirit or here, you work them as you work it as they're still alive, and you help the families the best that you can. And we have to learn from Sylvia Brown. We need to learn from her past, where she said those 3 girls were killed, you know, when they showed up, you know, 10 years later or whatever. Because you might get there's a lot of vibrations that feel the same. You might get a vibration that feels like they're dead, but they might have been severely depressed. And it feels the same way. So you don't want to, you know, and I've always worked in the, you know, if you don't have a body, then you search for a live one until you do.
Good call.
Stacy, you got anything to add?
I think the hardest cases for me to work on are the ones that they're still alive. And you start feeling all those emotions, and you know, some of them are being tortured, and you can see what they're physically going through and the abuse, and you just want to help them. And that, I think, is the hardest. You know, I worked on a case, not with you, Jen, but with somebody else, and she was alive for 3 weeks until they killed her, but she was being gang raped and shot up with drugs, and
Oh,
it was really horrific. And to see that and to go into that as a medium and not be able to do anything to help her besides try to give some information I think that was the hardest case that I've ever worked on.
did they end up finding her?
Yeah, they found her body. Yeah.
Whoa.
Jen?
So the other thing that I do know from my experience with cases is the energy that comes in. When you get like a crazy energy where it's just on you and you have the chills from head to toe, and it's just, that's usually a good indicator that they're no longer here for myself. And it's kind of this crazy phonetic energy that comes through. That's usually a pretty good sign. And it's stuff that, like when I worked on a case, it was constant when I worked on a case in New York. And it was just, and it is kind of brutal, but there's, you know, they look for us to find, you can use, that's why dialogue is very important. It's just, it's challenging when you're in it, but you need, because even when I get shown things, you need to ask, do I give that information? Because a lot of times, and I got told no on one case, and they told me like, they'll tell you later. You'll get an opportunity to say it. And 2 months later, sure enough, I was able to tell them. But if I would have told them at that point in time what I was getting, they would have been devastated. So Even if you get information, you still, for me, you still have to ask, should you give it?
But you validate with your guides usually, or whoever.
When you see something that especially that like I'm a mother, as a mother, you would never want to know about your daughter, that something happened to her that way. And you get told, don't give that information. It will come out later and you can give that information. You will be prompted. You will always be prompted to give that information. There was another case where I was told, don't give the information, ask her about her dream the night before. And I said, he said he visited you in a dream last night, and she started bawling. And I'm like, he told you what happened, and he showed her that he was shot, but I didn't have to say it. He gave me another way to say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think through impartial witness, one of the biggest things that we did learn was the ethics of it. And, you know, Jen and Lisa constantly telling us, like, this isn't about you and you wanting to be right.
No.
And trying to get fame from it, or whatever they're trying, some certain mediums are trying to do from it. I've worked on cases, not with Jen's team, but with other people, a group of mediums. And there was one that just wanted to take all the information that we all gave and wanted to put it off as her information, which is fine. But she was giving some stuff that was not, that as a mother, if I heard, I would be horrified. And you really have to be very careful with that.
It will come back. I can't tell you how many shows they've wanted to do. And I'm like, you can't have my agents. You can't have my FBI agents. They can never be. I'm like, you can't have my detectives. You can't have, there's no way unless someone who follows you around for 10 years to even get, because there's no, it's not like CSI. There's never a case that ends in a half hour. It takes forever for a case to end. But that being said, the only reason why I even thought about doing a show was to get the families that need it in the media that were willing to go on. That was the only way. But they still wanted, I want you to work with this person, or I want you, I'm like, no. I'm not gonna, it's not worth it. Yes, sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine. So I actually work different than Stacy because I prefer the ones that are still alive, because I know that there's a chance. You know, so for me, that's, even though it may be horrific, I prefer that. You know, once they're passed, there's not a whole lot you can do other than to try to bring them back home, you know, so that their families have closure.
Yeah.
And I think that we really have to be careful, you know, in what we say, because we have to remember that these people belong to somebody. And those somebody's, what we say could have an effect that lasts their entire lifetime. Words can be so powerful. I have a book behind me from Sharon Klingler called Power Words. And it's really an amazing book because words really are powerful. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you know what? On a side note, it's funny because I was just sitting here talking about how I don't remember readings except for a couple at Lilydale at the Stump. And Jennifer, I have a digital photo album, and there's a picture. I just barely glanced at it, and I think it's me, you, and Stacy. And it was right after I came off. It was in the auditorium because we couldn't go out at the Stump because of the weather. Do you remember when I did that reading? We were all there. And that's one that I do remember. And then when I came off, the three of us took that picture, and it's in my digital photo frame. So I see it every day.
I love that.
So does anybody, let's see if we have any more questions. And if not, how do you have discernment if you don't remember what you say in a reading? Spirit, for me, I can't speak for the rest, we'll let them say. For me, spirit gives me that discernment why I'm doing the reading. Spirit lets me know, you know, don't say this or don't say it like that. You know, be sensitive to the situation. What about you guys? Go ahead, Stace.
With my, I call them gatekeepers. With my gatekeepers, I have rules. So before spirit comes in, that spirit, I want to follow my rules before I give information. So even though it's not my information that I'm giving, it's coming from spirit, I still have discernment in there. And I will say, I'm not going to say that, you know, or I find a different way to say it. I think part of it is as you grow as a medium and you know that you're connected, you start getting that discernment as things flow a lot easier for you. You can use that discernment a lot more. And I also think, you know, if you're a person that constantly puts their foot in their mouth, you're not going to have that discernment. So I think it's partially like who you are as a person as well. All of a sudden that doesn't go away when you're doing mediumship. So I think it's something that you have as a person to begin with and that you just grow.
Yes, Jen.
If they were talking about if you don't remember or whatever, I was just saying, like, on every case I work with, when people come in my office, I make sure it's tape recorded. I make sure somebody else is writing notes the whole time, so I could just do my job. So
I think what she was talking, or yeah, I believe Chris is a female.
But that's the way to do it as well.
I believe what they were asking was how, and I shouldn't be assuming because, you know, it makes an ass out of you and me. But I think what they're trying to ask is how do we choose our words if we're in a state where we don't even remember what we said afterwards?
Chris just said yes to that.
Okay. Yes, MK.
Yeah.
I am totally aware of what I'm saying when I'm saying it.
In the
Yeah.
moment.
Right, in the moment, I totally know what I'm saying. And sometimes I say, I have to find the words for this. But that doesn't mean 5 minutes later, I'm going to remember it.
Exactly.
I'm very
Exactly.
aware.
I agree.
Covered it all.
If anybody out there has any questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, we will start to wrap it up.
Randy, Chris just asked, how are you careful with your words? And I
Oh,
think
that's a good question. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think that's just about learning discernment when you're reading and not trying to be a show off. Because some people will just say, well, I'm giving it, I'm getting it. I think that's BS. I think there has to be some kind of filter there, because one time you say the wrong thing, that sticks with that client forever. And it could put a bad taste in their mouth. And I think as all of us as being mediums, we have heard horror stories about, well, I saw this psychic and they told me this. And, you know, and then like, it just creates a bad taste in their mouth. But now you have a harder job trying to get them to where they need to be to receive the message, because
And sometimes you can't.
Well,
Right.
and this is exactly why law enforcement doesn't want to work with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is because they fly off the handle. It's because they say whatever they're getting. If they like, that's the exact reason why law enforcement, you know, it's very choosy about who they work with.
And I think it's wonderful that you have such a fantastic reputation, Jen, that you have created something that is absolutely wonderful to help so many families, and that you're so true with everything that you do within your work. And I think that's fantastic.
It's
Well,
an ongoing practice, but thank
and
you.
it's given all of us a platform to be able to do this work too. Here is an interesting question. And Jen, you're going to laugh because this is going to take you back to that stump reading that I did. How long do you spend talking to spirit before a departure reading, before your client arrives for the reading? Okay. That
What? I didn't understand that one. What is it?
Oh my gosh, I do remember. That's funny.
how long do you spend talking to a spirit before a departure reading,
Never.
before your client arrives for the reading? So what Jennifer is remembering is I did an animal communication reading, and that dog had been walking with me. What was it, like 2 days?
2 days, yeah.
2 days before. Now, I'm going to tell you another one. I was in Lilydale last summer and I did a stump reading. That horse was walking with me for a month before I got to Lilydale. For a month. And hold on one second, Stace, I see you. I love, spirit will just come and they'll just start talking to me and it just goes into a file. And then when it's time, it's just like blunt. You know, it makes it very easy for me. I love it. Yes, Stacy.
So when I first started, that used to happen to me. If I would have a client, the first 24 hours before they came, I would start getting information, and then they would keep me awake all night and things like that. And I had to tell my gatekeepers, look, I don't want anything till right when my client gets here. That's when the information can start flowing. But if you start having information flow before, Mavis Patilla has told us, because she's my mentor, that that's preloading, and Lisa Williams has also said that too. And you're no longer then having spirit again. But with you, with the animals, I'm sure they're still following you around. But I think with human entities or human spirits, or I think they believe that that's preloading. So
Well,
I have,
and I would say to that everybody works differently.
yeah.
And for me, it works. I don't ask for it. It just happens.
I just don't have time to preload.
I don't try to. It just happens.
Well, and I remember when you told me this story about the horse and you kept saying you told him not now, quit, stop, not now. You have to wait.
But they just keep coming. So, you know, everybody works differently. And if spirit is going to, I see you, MK. If spirit's going to keep coming and it's forceful about it, what am I going to do? Yes, MK.
I think we're talking about two different things. Stacking messages is like you go to the stump, you look over the audience, you pick up 2 or 3 people, you read them so that when you get up there, you're already to go. And that's what people object to. If spirit's giving you information, I don't think that's the same as stacking. Stacking,
I agree.
the intention, I think, is what's different.
I agree. And
It's not-
I think that in my mind, preloading, I think is too ambiguous.
Yours is different.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's too ambiguous because it can be confusing.
So preloading is stacking?
Well, like in a situation like MK was talking about, there are people that will go, let's say, to the stump. And like MK said, they'll look out in the audience. Now, if you want to get picked at the stump, there's a definite way to do it. Wear bright clothes, wear bright sunglasses, kind of like these, and wear them on your head, on the top of your head.
Hat.
Yeah, a bright hat. I mean, there's ways to try to get picked. And you'll have mediums that'll sit on the bench and they'll look out because they know that they're going to do 3 or 4 readings. They'll look out, and whoever they're attracted to, they'll make a mental note. Those are the people they'll go to.
Oh, it's more than that. They're getting information on them, which is really psychic.
Right. And I was just about to say, which isn't, in my mind, from what I've learned from Lisa and Sharon Klingler both, it's not the cleanest channel, because you have to go there and then try to go up from there, where you just go to spirit directly. And it's a much cleaner channel.
Yeah.
Let's see. how do you handle a direct question from a client as to whether or not their loved one is in spirit?
Whoa.
Who wants to take that one?
That
Come
sounds
on,
like
Jen.
Go ahead.
I've had that happen where someone will come and they've been estranged from a parent or a sibling or something for a very long period of time. And they want to know if they're still alive or not. And I don't know if I'm wussing out. I don't feel that I am, but I just tell them I don't have permission to connect with them.
I would agree with that.
Now, I suppose if they're in spirit, maybe that is kind of a cop out if they're in spirit, but I just feel very strongly about the ethics of connecting with someone for someone else.
Without their permission.
without
Yes.
permission. And I feel that way in animal communication too. I would not communicate with an animal that I didn't feel was giving me permission.
Oh, my students, I tell them all a story. I have, you all know that I'm a groomer, and I'm known particularly for short-haired coat carving. And there's another friend of mine who is a competitive groomer. And yes, we do have our own Olympic groom team. Yes, we do. We have the USA groom team. And she had a dog that she was concerned with. And I said, oh, honey, let me tap in. And if she happens to be watching this, she'll die laughing. And the dog gave me a response. And come to find out later that that was very, very invalid. So I went back and I said, I tapped into the spirit and I said, hey, you lied to me. And the dog's like, no, I didn't. You didn't ask me if I wanted to talk to you.
Mm.
And that's when I learned that I couldn't assume just because I'm friends with the owner that, I mean, I was disrespectful to the dog.
wow.
And, you know, there's a boundary there. Jen, did you have something you wanted to say, honey?
I get a lot of questions because I have a lot of people that have been adopted that come to see me for some reason. And so the adoption aspect of not knowing where their parents are, what, you know, I'm like, are their parents in spirit? You know, I'll get certain information, but I can't, you know, it's always a little bit, I can get information where I feel, I'll tell them what I'm feeling, but as far as if they're dead or not or whatever, that's something, again, it's something that I can't be definitive about.
I guess this question, because now there's a second question to it, is what if there's a disappearance?
Well, that's different. If there's a
Yeah, I agree.
they're connected to a disappearance, then yeah, we'll look into it. We'll see, you know, what we can. Do we tell them that they're gone? Like if they have to, for our group, for impartial witness, somebody has to have a connection to the family. They can't just be a friend of the families. They have to actually be a family member, because then we're getting real permission. You can't, like, I've turned away so many people that say, well, I know, we don't know if they know them or not. We're not going to go looking into a case if we don't know what their connection is. I did talk to somebody, you know, the case that you said, he's gone. I talked to a therapist about it because the family was actually, there was just stuff that was involved. But I did talk to somebody that was directly connected to him.
Mm-hmm.
He could verify.
Oh yeah, I knew instantly. Stace?
But other than that, if anybody comes up saying, well, I'm a friend of so-and-so and they said that their kid went missing, unless there's proof or unless there's a family, like have a family member call us.
Or you tell the family to call me.
Yes.
Stacy?
So the way I operate with it, and the way that I've been taught, is that you have permission if they're answering you because you're talking to their higher self. So their higher self will not respond to you if they're not giving permission. So that is the term, or that's what Mavis taught me with that. So that's where I've been sort of operating out of, like, I won't get anything if I don't have permission from their higher self, whether they're alive or deceased, if that makes sense.
I don't know that, I mean, for the most part, I'd say I agree with that, but I don't know if I agree with it 100%. Because look at the dog. I got a response.
Mhm.
but it was not a correct response. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
I think what she says makes a lot of sense, but nothing's 100%. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too.
It's just like a general rule to
Mhm.
follow.
Everything,
Yeah,
everything was 100%. We'd all have the lottery numbers.
right, right. And by the way, Jen, we just did a video on genealogy and mediumship because I'm one of those kids. I wasn't adopted, but I have no clue who my birth father is.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just did a whole thing, and it
Anything
was
is there anything in Ohio?
George's idea, and we found him.
You found him. Awesome.
She's from Ohio though. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got, do your own pets pick up on the spirit animals that follow before the departure reading? My animals are very in tune with spirit, and I even work with some of mine that have crossed over. I don't know if you guys can see right here, Papacito was a very famous guy. How many of you remember Papacito? This is Papacito right here. And he works with me all the time. And the very last trip that I took with him was to Lilydale.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he got to walk the stump and he got to do some things. So it was a good thing. Jen, did you have something to say?
I just think that every time I'm done with readings or I go home, all the animals are always, no matter what house I go to, they always come and lay by me. They always come to me. And it's just because they see spirit and they're so excited to like be by you. You know, after you've worked, you know, if you've worked with spirit all day, I just think animals are so much better and brighter than we are in so many ways. I love them. And I think it's great. I think everybody should work with animals. You're just really good at it, Randy.
Well, I think they're just
I like it.
pure of spirit, pure. They're purer soul than we are.
Absolutely.
I've never met a bad animal. I've met animals that were misunderstood. I've met animals that didn't know what was expected of them. I've met animals that were fearful. I've met a lot of things, but I've never met a bad animal. You know, in other words, where their inner self was bad. I've met a lot of bad people. You know what I'm saying?
bad.
And by the way, Julie that asked those questions is in Ohio.
Julie's in Ohio.
Okay.
Oh, there
So-
you go.
Any other thoughts before we close down? Anything anybody wants to share? Yes.
Earlier we were talking about, is this, and I hope I don't lose my train of thought in the middle of this. Is this stressful to do this kind of work? I don't feel the stress of it as much as I feel the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
And to me, there's a slight distinction between the two. I guess stress to me is more visceral and pressure is more cerebral, at least for me.
I agree.
I can understand that.
There's some cases, when I have cases that are all like, I don't ever watch the news because a lot of my cases end up on the news, but now I don't watch the news for very good reasons at all, but I know what's going on, just so you know. But I do feel like, yes, when you're under that pressure to find someone because you have, like, there is a chance, there is a hope, or whatever it is very, you know, I think that a lot of times too, just real fast, that when I have like this abrupt thing that I don't want to do it, it's usually, like you said earlier, a lot of times it's because they're already gone, or there is something that's like, there's something more to it, like maybe the family member that's asking could be possibly involved. We've had that happen. Okay, so listen to that guidance. Listen to that, like, why am I saying no to this? Or why am I not jumping on this? And 9 out of 10 times, it's because something has worked itself out too. But yes, the stress, I completely agree with you. The stress is different. The stress is like when I broke down in the morning, my husband was like, okay, you can't do this anymore. If it's going to take this much away from you, I can't watch you be like this, you know, and you figure it out. You go for a run or whatever it is that you do, or you drink wine or you don't, whatever it is.
That really helps me. I mean, I love it.
Right?
Fine. It's
Or you eat some gummy bears.
referring to.
Every once in a while, you just need a gummy. I mean, come on, Randy.
Whatever is your medium for it.
It always ends the same, doesn't it, MK? They always go back to that daggone gummy bear.
It's always back to those gummies, I tell you.
Tell you what, I think it has something to do with MK because every time she's here, you guys always bring up that daggone gummy bear thing.
Maybe I should bring some next time.
Yeah, right.
To say, MK, do you have a stash of the good gummy bears up there?
Actually, I don't like them.
Gummy bears and watching the koi pond.
Yeah, George is talking about a particular type of gummy bears, by the way.
Oh, those I might like. I've never had them. I could definitely use them.
It can be tough, MK. I mean, you know, it does give you the munchies, which is not conducive to my lifestyle.
Or
but-
you get worried that you're going to go outside and be eaten by coyotes in somebody's case.
That did
Oh,
happen.
of course, coyotes might get you.
Sure.
That did happen, yes.
He was
Post-traumatic.
He was positive they wanted some Portuguese food that night.
I swear to you, yeah, because I was at my Palm Springs house and I live on a golf course, and somebody said try these gummies, and I did, and all of a sudden it was like paranoia, and I was like, there's no way I'm going out there. They're gonna eat me. They want Portuguese food. It's gonna be me, and I was horrified. But anyway, that's another story.
I'll skip them. Thanks.
The
If you ever
one
get a case
thing-
in a Portuguese guy in California that got eaten on a golf course, know that was the gummy.
Yeah, I know who it was.
Yes, Stacy.
I have a question for Jen. Jen, when you have somebody that wants to do a mediumship reading with you, but about somebody that's deceased and they are a family member, but you feel like they had a hand in that, how do you approach that?
Wow.
It's happened a couple times, which has been it's like a bad show. Like it's like one of those like bad crime scenes where the psychic actually helped kill wants to see if the psychic can figure it out, because if the psychic can't figure it out, then the cops can't figure it out. We've had that before, and so this is where my executive case manager, who's the executive on the director, Tony, she's the one that streamlined. She doesn't give me half the cases. She's like, I'm not going to bother you with that. But there's some that are so crazy that she weeds them out. She's so in tune. She weeds them out. But it is frightening that they actually think that, that we can read them and try to pin, I've had that happen a couple times, and you just basically kind of just go, no, I'm not feeling it. You actually get
Then you become a target.
I've had emails sent to me saying that I know you know who killed this person. I've worked on cases where it is painfully has made me scared. I had the Mexican mafia in my office. Their mother went missing. They had 2 bodyguards downstairs. That shook me a little bit.
Oh my God.
And when I looked into it to see, that's actually when I'm like, I think I need a different phone line. There's been a lot of it's an education. You get educated by the things that happen while you do these cases. But you have to tell yourself, okay, nobody goes after police officers. Nobody goes after, they say that on shows, but that's not real life. And I like to think that I have enough friends in the FBI. I have enough friends that are, I have enough friends that would tell me, because I literally am how do I get wiped from the internet at this point? I was scared shitless over it. And eventually it worked out, but I don't know. You just have to be careful. That's why we don't mention names. That's why we don't go, that's why we sign, NDAs. This is why we do this, because we think that it's okay, but It doesn't keep you safe.
You know, and if I ever ended up in a situation where I had the person sitting across from me and I clearly got that they were involved, I think I would withhold information,
Absolutely. You wouldn't
you
give them,
know?
give them information. You would, because normally they're a profile. Okay. Imagine the person that's in front of you or on the phone. They're narcissistic because they want to be there, right? They're so sure of themselves that they're such a great profile that you immediately know that they're full of shit. Sorry, full of crap. And so you're able to profile them before you even go into, and I do that with everybody.
And if you tell them, then you just, like Stacy said, you just became a target because now they and you are the only people that know.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, it's happened a couple times in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I've done thousands of readings. I've probably hundreds of cases, and only in the context over the last 10 years, I'm just telling you that maybe 5 have scared the crap out of me.
and I think we've gotten to the end of all of our questions. So one thing that I do want to close with, and then I'm going to give each person an opportunity to give any final thoughts, is, you know, remember we all do work differently. And just like I had said to Stacy earlier that, you know, I didn't totally agree with something. That doesn't mean that it's wrong what she had to say or what one of her mentors had to say. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means for the way that I work, it doesn't fit, because I would never be disrespectful or mean to be disrespectful in that way. I always say that I can't stand when mediums, you know, backbite other mediums, because who's one person to say that their way is the right way and that this person isn't doing it right? We all work different.
Right.
And we need to respect each other in that way. So with that, I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to say any final words. So we're going to go MK, George, Stacy, Michelle, and then Jen.
I think I've said about all I know or can share at this time. Just be safe is my biggest
Okay,
words of wisdom, is be safe.
perfect. George?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's back to what Jennifer said, and I think it's going with your gut. You might not understand what's going on, but if you communicate it at the right time, it could really help. But, you know, I mean, again, just follow your gut, like the Austin thing, right? We've had this on our show several times where we're thinking something, we're like, how could it be? Well, it can't.
How can it be that easy?
Yeah, exactly. So I say go with your gut. That would be my last little closing there.
Okay, Stace?
I think that if you are going to do this, I think it's fantastic to do it with a group so that you're not singled out. I think, you know, like Jen's group, having training with her group and then going through that is a lot safer than working on your own, and you don't put a target on your back.
I agree. Michelle?
Hey, I just want to say thanks for everybody to come in and discussing it, because it was totally fascinating to me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
It's I think it's something a lot of people probably don't think about, the combination of two, other than, you know, the bad stories that we all know of. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It gives you a lot to think about, and even like with me being, you know, just starting out and stuff, it gave me a lot to think about as far as, you know, how to get messages, when to get them, and you know, if you're going to do that kind of work, I can't imagine doing it like George and Stacy, because I don't get a lot of it emotionally or physically. I get a lot of it mentally. So I can't imagine doing that kind of stuff if you're feeling that you know, if you're getting the actual sensations of what occurred. So so yeah, thanks. And it was great meeting you, Jen.
nice meeting you too.
And Jen, you're up.
I just want to say thank you. This was a great platform. Thank you, Randy, for allowing me to be here.
Oh, honey, we wanted you here. Are you kidding? So we should be thanking you.
Yeah.
I do believe that everyone can do this. And like we've all discussed, everyone gets information elsewhere. Like, even if you're new, you're aware, like, so you've always been connected, Michelle and George, like you guys have always been connected. It's just your awareness now is getting more connected. That's all it is. So always know that. That's the one thing I can tell you. Always know that you're connected. It's just now your awareness is opening up more. And yes, work with a group. Lisa's a great teacher. Everybody's like, anybody that's willing to teach this, please do. Like, you guys can teach, you can knock it out of the park teaching this. We create a safe space. You know, all of us create a safe space for you to learn. And what's great about this is, you know, this is what made me comfortable doing other things. It normally is the other way around. People become mediums and then they dabble. That's what actually made me comfortable doing everything else, because there's little things that you'll get and it's not our job to know what they mean. And then when you realize that, when you go into your own readings for other people, you know, you're able to say things like, I'm not sure why this donkey is showing up, or whatever it is. Or this,
Stop it.
why is it, George, I'm seeing something in Palm Springs and a gummy and a wolf. Like, I mean,
And
You
Michelle, a
weren't far off
donkey.
with the donkey either. I gotta tell you, it was my.
The donkey belongs to Michelle.
Donkeys.
I don't know. I'm just saying what I'm getting, but I loved it, you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. And like I said, if anybody's interested, please reach out to Randy, reach out to Stacy, reach out to MK. Like, it's such a great platform to learn, because you learn a lot about yourself and what you can handle.
Hmm.
And we'll put all of our information up in just a couple minutes here. I'd like to end by saying, if you enjoyed this video, if you got value out of it, we encourage you to share it, because there may be somebody else that can get value out of it as well. If you're watching on YouTube, we encourage you down at the bottom to hit subscribe. And again, if there's somebody that you think could get value out of it, please share it. You know, it's not about being big and famous. It's about getting content out there to people that need it and that want it. The contest. If you want to win this selenite brick, then you need to share the video from May 4th, May 11th, and tonight. And you need to let us know how many times the word crew was said in each one of those videos.
May 4th, May 11th,
And May 18th.
18th. Okay.
And we need to know how many times the word crew was said in each one of those videos. And it needs to be posted in tonight's comments on Facebook. And it needs to be done by noon Eastern time on the 23rd, so that we have time to go and retrieve them and do the drawing on the 25th.
For Monday.
Right. If you would like to stay informed on any classes, workshops, or online spiritual book clubs, make sure to visit crackingthespiritualcode.com and you'll find them there. And we do have an amazing spiritual book club going on right now, which is the Dynamic Laws of Prosperity.
Oh, can I say something about that?
Yes.
Game changer, because you told me about this a year ago. Game changer for so many of my clients. I've passed that along. Thank you, Randy.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to screen share really quick here. I just almost pushed the wrong button.
I just want to say real quick, Tammy has 2 donkeys, she said.
And does one of them belong to you?
No, I am not involved at all.
That is so funny. I'm like, why am I saying donkey?
Okay, can you guys see the screen at all?
Pull it up.
You need to open, you need to open your window there.
Uh,
There you go.
Perfect.
okay, so that is all of our individual oh, how did MK get moved over like that? Well, apparently Spirit wanted her to be moved over because I certainly didn't do that. Okay.
All right.
And so, like I said, the drawing will be done on the 25th. You got the info, and we are wishing you all an absolutely amazing night. And please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Jen, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will call you in a couple days or in the next couple days to chat. And I'll send you the link to the YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, you guys.
Good night, everybody. Have a great night.
Night, night
you.
crew.
Crew. No. Michelle's going to have a wonderful time counting all the crews in every video.
True.
All right. Good night.